Yeah, this week I'm doing another kind of like part 2 vibe for this episode. Last week was crazy with the kind of, insider tips and talk about BlackRock and NVIDIA breadcrumbs and everything like that. Last week was pretty wild. And what ended up happening was there was a bunch of news and actually I would say really good breakdowns of kind of what some of those things could be. So there was definitely from the episode last week, there's these additional conversations that were happening. I obviously had some more thoughts on them. So I was like, you know what, it kind of felt like a 2-parter episode. I think there's definitely more to discuss. And then the other thing too was there was a couple other stories that came out this week and some other things that were kind of brought to my attention that fit that vibe a little bit. And I mean, we're at the beginning of a new quarter. We're at the beginning of quarter 2. It just feels like it is rumor season. I'll give you that. I think that there's a lot of rumors going down. So anyways, it is now 12 Eastern. Let's get started with the show.
And we're live. You're listening to the Hashgraph Enthusiast Show.
Hosted by Brandon Davenport, aka It's Brandon D.
And here we go. We're getting ready. We're rocking and rolling. Last week it was funny. People watching on the main video here and then on Spaces here, people were commenting does my dog sleep the whole episode? And I don't know how long I got my charger plugged in here. Hold on. My dog sleeps through the whole episode every time, like an angel. My co-host. It is episode, jeez, I'm doing too much right now. It's episode 119, Hashgraph Enthusiasts. Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. Should we be thinking bigger part 2? It's part 2. And that's kind of like I was saying last week. We had a bunch of interesting conversations. And those conversations spill over, they turn into bigger discussions. And some of the stuff we're going to talk about today, this week, is, there was a great breakdown, a community kind of deep dive into DTCC and Securrency, which we've talked about on the show in previous episodes. But, this week, there's a little bit of a different light on it. I kind of want to revisit it. And it folds back into what was shared on the episode, last week. And then, there's some meme coin stuff. There's just a random article that I wanted to share as well. And then we're going to talk about, of course, there's a lot of things on people's mind, like Diamond Standard, Scott Thiel, VR Jam, HCS3, FSCO. There's a lot of stuff going on. And then the main thing today that I'm excited about, and I think we'll kind of just dive into it. It's good to have friends on the show. I'm going to have Bonzo Finance on the show, and we've got Gaurang as well joining, and Brady will be stopping by, I believe, as well. But Bonzo Finance is something that's on the top of my mind right now, because when we look at the Hedera ecosystem, DeFi, all those different types of things, over the last year, I've had so many conversations with so many amazing builders in the space. And for a long time, people have been talking about, borrowing, lending, and the real importance of that. And the reality is that there's a lot of value on this network, even though it may feel, comparatively smaller to other networks. Of course, you have to create more value. There has to be more projects. There has to be more tokens, all these different types of things, more investors. But also it's about unlocking the value that's already here, making it more usable. And that's where borrowing and lending comes in, and also creating more opportunities for people to, get yield on this network and all those types of things. All those, checking those boxes that make things attractive for investors coming into the Web3 space. But more than happy to welcome to the show, Gaurang to the show. I listened to your spaces that you had, the Bonzo Finance spaces you had with Brady last week. It was awesome. Hope you're doing well, and yeah, welcome. It's great to finally chat with you.
Hey. Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting us. Brady should be joining in a few minutes, but I can start in the meanwhile.
Good stuff.
So yeah, thanks for having us.
Right on. Yeah, and I mean, what I would say is, just while we give a moment and wait for Brady, I mean, I heard you speaking on the spaces with Brady, talking about Bonzo Finance. I've had Brady on the show many times, real kind of OG in the space, a long term, as we call it, HBAR barium. But yourself, hearing you speak about Bonzo Finance, hearing you speak about the ecosystem, clearly, you know a lot about the Hedera ecosystem. But I've never really, been aware of your existence, and I was just so cool to kind of like hear you speaking about things. So maybe, give a minute here and kind of a little introduction, more so for myself. I'm very curious as kind of like how you got into Hedera, kind of how long you've been in the ecosystem, and yeah, it'd be awesome to get a little bit of intro from you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for that. So yeah, I'm Gaurang, and I've been in the blockchain space since about 2016. And unlike a few other blockchain OGs, I first got into the Ethereum ecosystem before I got into Bitcoin. A lot of people that I know first bought their Bitcoin and then got into Ethereum, but it was the opposite for me. And that's because I'm software developer by background. So I've been working in software companies, doing my own startups since 2013, almost. So I was based in Singapore at that time, and the reason I got into the whole blockchain ecosystem because I was enamored by the concept of writing smart contracts on the blockchain. So the ability to write smart contracts, the ability to write code that could actually handle your real money, I think that was really fascinating for me, right? So when I first heard about blockchain, when I first heard about Ethereum and smart contracts, I was like, whoa, that's awesome. So yeah, that's how I got into the Ethereum ecosystem in Singapore. And after that, when Hedera was launched, I have been following Hedera since then, Hedera Hashgraph. And I've been on the sidelines in this Hedera ecosystem. So my day job until now has been running a blockchain development company. So in this blockchain development company, we have worked on multiple blockchain projects over the last 7 years. So we have built NFT marketplaces. We have built some DeFi apps. We have built Web3 games, and we have also built like decentralized advertising networks. So yeah, that's how I have a lot of experience in the space in building products and building dApps on the blockchain. And I have worked on multiple networks. I worked on Ethereum. I worked on Polygon, on RSK, which is like the Bitcoin EVM network. And I know Brady since last year, actually. So, in fact, actually, I had interviewed at Swirls Labs last year, and
Okay.
I kind of got an offer from them, but I couldn't join because of some visa issues at the time.
Gotcha.
But yeah, since then I know Brady, and I know another person from the Hedera ecosystem called Thamim. So he's on one of the governing council companies,
Right.
LSE, which is a London university. He actually sits on the governing council on their behalf. So through Thamim, I have known the ecosystem very well. And recently, when Brady was kind of thinking of launching Bonzo Finance, Thamim introduced me to Brady, and then we got talking. And as you were saying earlier, I really understood that this is like a big missing piece in the Hedera ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
And as you know, Hedera ecosystem, it's like maturing, right? You have Saucer Swap, which is one of the biggest DEX on the ecosystem. But what's missing are the other Lego blocks from the DeFi ecosystem, right? So if you look at any upcoming blockchain ecosystem, for example, take an example of Blast, right? So Blast launched like 2-3 weeks ago, and now they have these building blocks for the DeFi ecosystem, and all those building blocks, they kind of follow the same path if you think about it. So you start with the dexes, so that you can do on-chain swaps in a P2P manner. Then you have lending protocols. then you have perp exchanges. So yeah, similarly, we think that Hedera ecosystem has to evolve if it has to become bigger. And we already have a DEX. So like the next logical piece of the puzzle was a lending protocol. And when I was talking to Brady, I'm like, yeah, this just makes sense. Like it's a nice idea. It's a simple idea. And it has to work. Like the ecosystem needs this, right? Yeah.
That's great. And I think that what you touch on is, I think, something that, an approach that a lot of successful projects take, which is really looking for problems and providing some of those solutions. And like, the obvious question, I think that the question that's on a lot of people's minds when it comes to, these types of projects coming into Hedera and stuff is it's, besides, working with Brady and stuff, like what for you, I guess more so, understanding all the ecosystems out there, working on Ethereum, as you said, working on Polygon, all of these, arguably more established ecosystems that have, let's say, like more liquidity or more products or more users. Why choose Hedera, right? Which has, a smaller user base and smaller resources comparatively to other networks. Why lean into Hedera? Like, is it because, there's that opportunity for growth, or because there's a major problem that has to be solved, or is there more to that? I'm just curious, especially with something, this exciting in the ecosystem. Why go full in on Hedera?
Yeah, so we think that this is the right time to do this. So until now, as I said, we have had only Saucer Swap, which was one of the biggest DEXs. But to build like a lending protocol, the other pieces weren't there. But like recently with the launch of Supra Oracles on Hedera, I think it's the right time to build this kind of a network on Hedera. And why Hedera? The simple answer to that is like there's an opportunity. There's a glaring problem, not a problem. There's a glaring piece of the puzzle that we can fit into, and I think that's a massive opportunity. So as an entrepreneur, as a builder, I have always looked at networks. I have always looked at companies and opportunities where I can get in early. Like that's why I got into Ethereum very early. Like I don't want to get into a system where you have like $100 billion of TVL. Then you don't have any
Right.
room for growth, right? But if you look at Hedera is at a great moment right now, right? So you have 150 million TVL around that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's just room to grow. We can easily reach like 1 billion TVL in this cycle, I think. That's like, yeah, I don't want to speculate.
Okay, that gets me excited though. You pull out the big B word,
There's a potential to go like 8x from here, just with Saucer Swap. I think they are going to grow from here, right? Like just alone, they can take us like 2x, 3x from here.
Sure.
So I think there's massive opportunity here, definitely.
That's huge. And I agree with you. And I think you touched on something important there, which is, again, I think a real quality of builders. And I think why I'm really interested in Bonzo Finance is, approaching this network with the right attitude. And I think that sometimes people go, oh, it's a new network and the technology is really cool and there's a lot of opportunity here. And then there's kind of like this, and they don't really kind of understand some of the shortcomings of Hedera sometimes. And then there's like this middle camp, which is like, not like looking for like, what's the total addressable market, or getting disappointed in Hedera or giving up on Hedera. Right. And then there's the third camp, which I feel you guys kind of fall in, which is like, hey, we're creating the total addressable market. And there is a lot of opportunity here. There is risk reward. And so I think it's like, if you come at it with the right approach into a network like this, you can have that success. But if you don't understand that you're going to have a little bit of that short-term pain, that short-term risk to potentially, as you said, kind of ride that wave, and really kind of embrace the timing of everything. I think that's key. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that, because you're doing a borrowing and lending protocol, obviously oracles are really, really important. I noticed, that you guys, I saw Brady just popped up here, but, I had a chance to chat with Brady in Denver, and he was telling me about Bonzo, and it was right at the time where, Super Oracle was coming into Hedera. And also the Pyth or Pith network or whatever. Like, Were oracles really the last key piece for Bonzo Finance to like wake up and start working on your roadmap? Was oracles really a key thing you guys were waiting on Hedera?
It wasn't really like we were waiting on it, but like when we saw it coming and like when Brady was doing some research, like we felt that this is the right time, and
Right.
not just with the technology, like as you said, with the total TVL, with the addressable market that we can grow, and as you said, like it's not just about looking at the current market size. I think it's about growing the market together.
Yes.
Like as ecosystem participants, we have the ability and we have the chance to actually grow this market. And the market will grow in two ways. Like so, let's just take a simple example, right? So as Bonzo Finance, if we want to get that TVL when we launch, there are two ways of doing it. One is you get it from the existing ecosystem in Hedera, right? People who haven't yet gone on Saucer Swap, they're not using Saucer Swap, right? So people who are like sitting idle with their assets. Or the second way is to actually get more retail users in the ecosystem. And I think the HBAR Foundation, Swords Labs, and all these big players, they are actually making efforts to get more retail into the whole ecosystem itself, right? So, and with a product like Bonzo Finance, we have that opportunity to grow that whole pie. It's not about like taking liquidity from someone else and then being predatory. Like I think it's about growing the whole pie together. I think that's very important for us. Yeah, the collaboration aspect of things.
Love that. Brady, good to see you. I'd give an intro for Brady, but I mean, if folks in the Hedera ecosystem don't know Brady at this point, I mean, what are you doing? But
you need to know Brady.
right? I mean, like, I was like, this is Brady. And I was like, there's no point. I was just going to say, like, Brady, I was just kind of touching with, Gaurang about the history of Bonzo Finance, him mentioning that kind of like, the journey kind of getting there, getting connected with you. Potentially he might have worked at Swirls Labs and then made another pivot and, ran a software company, all these different types of things. And I was curious at it from your side, right as we're kind of getting close to you guys executing on your roadmap and going live, like taking a minute here to kind of explore, like, where did Bonzo Finance start? Like from your perspective, Brady, like what was some of the factors that made you decide, yes, we need to be the ones to, build this protocol? What kind of did that journey look like over the last year or so, as kind of Gaurang was saying?
Yeah, no doubt. I appreciate the question. And then, for anybody who I haven't met, my name is Brady. I used to work at Hedera and Swirls Labs for about 5.5 years. And, after that time, decided I wanted to be on the other side of the fence, supporting the ecosystem. And specifically, my interests really lie in the retail ecosystem on Hedera, especially seeing how rapidly that's grown over the past 2 years or so. And so left Hedera maybe 4 months ago now, and knew that I wanted to try and start something that contributes to that ecosystem, and spent a good amount of time trying to sort of research and understand where the gaps are that exist in the DeFi ecosystem today. Ran through a couple random kind of crazy ideas, infrastructure ideas and whatnot, and then started really looking at, again, the DeFi ecosystem and the trajectory that it's on, the liquidity that's being made available, the HTS token-based projects, and then so economic aspects of it, and then to Gaurang's point, also the technical aspects of it. So as I was departing, was aware that we had oracles that were starting to become online and would be soon announced. Oracles are a critical component of safe lending and borrowing. We never had that before. Prior to that, didn't have JSON RPC relay to be able to do development environments and easily port over existing EVM-based protocols like Aave, which Bonzo is based on. And so in sort of aggregating all of that research and looking at the gaps and looking at the organic sort of growth of other DeFi ecosystems, lending and borrowing seemed kind of like a no-brainer. DEXs come on first, creates a lot of liquidity. Lending and borrowing typically comes next in that sort of order of operations. And then, after that, you're looking at things like perpetuals and futures and other types of more complex DeFi types of transactions that we're, at some point the ecosystem is going to need to enter into as well. So, Gaurang and I were reconnected from T of London School of Economics. He sat on the governing council for a while. T and I have been pretty close for a couple of years now. And Gaurang and T have known each other for a while as well, with both of them based in London. So T had connected us, and Gaurang and I had chatted for like over a week, sort of talking about the opportunity and sort of what I was imagining with Bonzo and the vision and the ecosystem. And then Gaurang very thankfully made the decision to jump into this. And so, we hit the ground running and have been going since then. I'm out in London right now, actually visiting him for a week, and we're doing a bunch of strategy work and making a lot of great progress. Yeah. So it's been wonderful. I felt like I was looking for that like needle in a haystack person, and serendipitously we were able to find each other. So it's been really great.
Right on. That's great. I think you guys make a good team. That's why I reached out to Gaurang after, because I want to kind of continue the convo on some of the things that you guys talked about on your first spaces. So I would say, like, if there's any gaps that people want to fill in knowledge on kind of what Bonzo Finance is about, like, listen to that spaces that they did, because they really covered a lot of ground on that spaces. And it's kind of, as I was listening to the recording, I was like, I got to get this guy on my show, because it's really exciting. It feels like a whole new thing coming to Hedera. And correct me if I'm wrong, Brady, but like, it feels like because the Hedera ecosystem is so specific and so, for lack of a better word, I don't want to say maxi, but like, a lot of people in Hedera, their first foray into crypto was Hedera. So the concept of borrowing and lending and all the different things about it might be a little bit more foreign to a lot of people. Do you kind of get that as well in this space of like, this is a really fresh thing for a lot of people?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we actually did like a little survey from the Bonzo Finance handle, sort of polling whether people in the Hedera retail ecosystem have had experience with lending and borrowing on other protocols, and overwhelmingly people haven't. And it was intuition sort of said that was the case, especially looking historically again with Saucer Swap. They did an amazing job educating all of the retail users on Hedera who this was their sort of first foray into crypto and their first home-based ecosystem. And so, we anticipate needing to do the same type of education, tutorials, providing information sort of generically about various strategies related to this. Obviously, not financial advice, but just sort of agnostic education about what you can do with borrowed assets. And so, we're really hoping to sort of be the home base for that, for the ecosystem, and try to support the retail community and institutional community as well as much as possible.
Love it.
Just to add on to that point about the education and like using these protocols for the first time, So for example, on Ethereum back in the days, like 2018, 19, 20, that era, like when Uniswap came out first, right? When you used Uniswap for the first time, or in case of Hedera, Saucer Swap for the first time, it's amazing, right? You have that eureka moment, like, oh, this is how easy it can be, right? Like you used Coinbase, you used Binance, but then when you use something like Uniswap or Saucer Swap, it's just amazing. It's just a different thing that you're doing, and that you just fall in love with that, right? And same thing with Aave or Compound. Like this is just a whole new take on things. Like it's nothing new, right? Getting loans, borrowing, it's not new, but doing it in this way on the blockchain, that's like a complete paradigm shift, I think. And I think when people get to experience that, and that's why we want to launch on the testnet very soon, because when people get to experience that, when people get to play with that, when people get their hands on that, I think they're just going to, it's just going to click with them. We want to make it so easy for them that, like, it's just intuitive, They don't need any tutorials or anything. Yeah.
That's a great, probably one of the best strategies, especially in this space, is, how quickly can we let somebody have a positive experience with something new? Those kinds of moments that, like, as you're describing, is like, I think really where the magic happens. And I think that strategy is really the backbone of Saucer Swap's approach. And so I think I like that you guys are borrowing from that. And I think on the education side, I want to talk a little bit about kind of what you guys are building. I had some essentially like follow-up questions from your spaces that you did, but I guess like maybe more broadly, like, self-admittedly from myself, it's like, I haven't really participated a ton in borrowing and lending on crypto. And it's, for me, I'm curious to know, like, what are some common misconceptions of borrowing and lending? And maybe what are some useful info that can shed some light on those things? I mean, obviously it's like, oh, it's really high risk, or what if you don't trust the person, or these kind of, dumb questions, or, but from what you guys have experienced in both of your careers and experiences, with this kind of stuff on all sorts of networks, like what are some of those common, misconceptions? And is there any way you can kind of like shed some light on some of those things?
Sure, yeah. Maybe I can go first and Brady can
go for it. First to unmute gets to answer the question. That's how it works.
Yeah. So the first thing here is, in lending and borrowing on the blockchain, specifically with Aave or Compound, what you're getting is not really a loan per se, right? So, for example, if you want to get like a bachelor's degree in the US or a master's degree, you go out and get an educational loan, right? So, in that case, you're getting money from a bank or some other financial institution, but you're not putting any collateral against it, right? There might be some, your credit score and all those things, but you're not really putting money to get money. But in case of Aave, what happens is you have to collateralize, or you have to deposit one asset to get or borrow another asset, and you can't borrow the same amount. So, for example, if you deposit HBAR tokens, which are worth $1,000, so let's say at 10 cents they are like 10,000 HBAR tokens. You can, let's say, borrow SOS tokens or Galaxy tokens or HBARX tokens only up to a certain threshold. And in our case, that threshold might be, I don't know, 60-70%. So let's say you deposit tokens worth $1,000. You can only borrow other tokens with up to $600 or $700. So it's not like a loan like your real life. In this case, you're kind of leveraging the assets. Again, no financial advice. You shouldn't do this if you don't want to, or if you don't really understand. But the thing is, when you deposit an asset and when you borrow some other asset, what you're doing is you're trying to get an exposure on the new asset without selling your first asset. So let's take an example. You are long on HBAR. You think HBAR is going to go 10x from here. It might not. You think no financial advice. It's not about 10x and all that. It's like you believe in HBAR. You don't want to sell your HBAR, for example, right? But at the same time, you want to get exposure to some other assets, or you need some liquidity. You want to borrow some stable coins without selling your HBAR. So what you can do is you deposit the HBAR and you borrow the stable coins against that up to a certain amount, as I said, up to $600 or $700 in that case. Now you can do anything with these stable coins or with your SOS tokens. You can do anything. Or in the other case, again, no financial advice. I want to keep repeating that. Let's say you deposit HBAR worth $1,000. You borrow SOS tokens worth $600, but you think that in comparison with HBAR, SOS are going to be at a much higher value in the next 6 months. So these are some of the use cases for lending and borrowing on blockchain. And as I said, the protocol, the Aave protocol, which we are working, it makes it really easy for this to take place on the blockchain. Yeah, Brady, you want to add anything else to this?
Yeah, no, I thought that was a great explanation, and sort of foundationally the mechanics of lending and borrowing, and then sort of some reasons why someone might want to do that. And I think what this also opens up opportunities for in the ecosystem is the utility of these token-based projects that are on Hedera. People can get greater exposure to the utility of them related to the native asset of them. And so what I mean by that is, and again, we keep saying not financial advice. This is absolutely not financial advice. But when we sort of think through these different ideas of reasons why people could do it, look at karate combat, for example. When you have karate tokens, you go into the karate combat application. You've got your karate tokens in your wallet. The utility of that application with the karate tokens, outside of just governance with those tokens, is the ability to place I guess they're not bets because you can't lose, at least right now, but they're sort of gestures of sort of support for a certain fighter winning versus another fighter, and you get to earn tokens that way. And so if you imagine, you're big into karate combat, you see that there's one fighter that you particularly like and you believe in, and you want to really boost your bet. And so you could, again, take HBAR, deposit it, be able to lend or borrow out karate tokens and use that as part of the utility of the karate combat platform. And if you sort of take that example and expand out to other applications on Hedera that are token based, there's more examples of utility that exists for those tokens where you can sort of double down on your sort of support for utilizing that. So I think foundationally, lending and borrowing is also a way to help boost the utilization of these applications on Hedera, which is really important. We want active users. We want people utilizing these applications and these protocols, and we're sort of here in support of that as well. Obviously, with the risk that everyone individually is comfortable with, but it opens up the door for something new that was not previously available in the Hedera ecosystem.
Right. And just to add on to that, just one last point here is these kind of financial primitives, these kind of financial products, I would say, or ways of doing things, are readily available to institutions and traders at these big companies, big firms.
Right.
But it hasn't been available to retail until now. You can't go and do this with your TradFi, banks or mortgage or lender, But now with the power of blockchain, you can do this for $10, for $100, for $1,000, very small amounts. But if you go to a TradFi system, you need millions of dollars to even kind of get access to these products. And I think that's the real power of blockchain. That's why I've been in blockchain for the last 7-8 years, and that's why we all believe in blockchain.
Right. Okay. So bringing up institutions, TradFi, that's, I think, one of the key, potential misconceptions. I think that, again, putting myself in the shoes of let's say a Mike Maloney precious metal Hedera HBAR 2019, holder or whatever, not really I see Brady doing the laughing emoji. Not really up to speed on some of this stuff. And so I think of maybe asking you a question in regards to when it comes to borrowing money or taking on leverage, it's with established systems, you have trust, maybe you have some kind of form of insurance, all these different things with, traditional finance system, people want to borrow things. And then, maybe this kind of borrowing, lending, smart contract kind of stuff sounds more risky. What would happen if, the price changed drastically on some of these assets, or what if, one of these loans or defaulted or whatever it could be. Of course, I think a lot of people are going to kind of start asking some of those questions. And I was curious, specifically on that kind of train of thinking, from your guys' perspective, how would you best kind of deal with some of those questions, maybe misconceptions or criticisms on borrowing and lending in crypto?
No, these are not misconceptions, and I think we are going to make that clear in all our marketing materials, all our websites and everything. This is extremely risky, and there are risks at multiple levels here. So the first one is the smart contract risk, right? So there's always a risk that the smart contract might get hacked. We are going to do an audit. We won't deploy contracts that are not audited. So we are actually talking to some auditors already. The thing is, we will try our best to make it safe and secure, but we can't guarantee that there would be no hacks. There can be hacks. That's number one. Second is within the smart contracts itself, there's multiple moving pieces, multiple things. So one example is with the oracles. So as you said, the price of the collateral asset, the price of the assets that you deposit itself might go down. That's one risk at the market level. But even at the technical level, there's a risk that, again, I'm not saying this would happen, but with Supra oracles, they might fail. There might be a problem with Supra oracles, for example. And they would send us the wrong price or zero, and then that could trigger some liquidations. So there are risks here. What we are trying to do is, as I said, we'll make sure the contracts are as safe as possible. I'm not saying it's unhackable. No, it's not. We'll make sure it's as safe. But second is even with the way people lend and borrow, we want to make sure that there's a big buffer in this case. So in our case, the loan to value ratio will be quite low. It will be so we're going to start with safety in our mind. Let's say you deposit tokens worth $1,000, you won't be able to borrow tokens worth 900 or 950.
Gotcha.
That's too risky, even with HBAR, for example. But so we will make sure that we start in a very safe manner. People might get pissed off that they can only borrow up to, let's say, $500 or $400, but that's okay. We start slow, we start in a safe manner, and then we can ramp it up as the ecosystem matures, as people know what to do and how to do these things. So these are 2 points from a technical perspective from my side. Brady?
Yeah, those are great points. And I mean, it is inherently risky. I think lending and borrowing relative to sort of different categories of DeFi, we sort of recognize that inherent risk, and we want to do our best to mitigate that risk for, as Gaurang mentioned, at the protocol level. Second, at the user level, so retail users being able to perform these types of transactions with safety in mind, and being very aware of those risks that they would be potentially setting themselves up for. And that's, including things in the UI UX that sort of give them an anticipation of, what a transaction might do prior to them performing it. There's what's called a health factor. And a health factor is based on how much you have collateralized or supplied in liquidity, and how much you are borrowing against that collateral. And as that ratio changes, you have a health factor associated with it. And so, prior, for example, to borrowing more funds out of the collateral you've supplied, based on the amount that you're selecting, it gives you an idea of, hey, this is going to impact your health factor by this much. This is sort of that level of risk that you're taking on. And then additionally, simulations that would help you sort of understand sort of how much you're willing to take on risk-wise. And then risk for the ecosystem as well, the DeFi ecosystem. When you start to enable this type of financial transaction, there's so many moving parts that are happening that are ecosystem wide versus just sort of in silo on Bonzo. When people have access to larger amounts of liquidity, and they can use those assets, for example, to trade on Saucer Swap and affect the liquidity pools there, or other applications in the ecosystem. You want to try and do as much as possible to mitigate outsized impacts at the ecosystem level and ensure that we retain a healthy DeFi ecosystem. And so, various things that we can try to do to ensure that that's the case. And then let's see what else. What else? 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 What else Yeah, I think a big portion of it is just ensuring that people are very sort of supported throughout the process. They understand what it is that they're sort of engaging in. It's just it's very important to sort of be careful and inform users properly.
And just to add on to that, Brady, like what we were discussing yesterday, like as builders, the approach that we are taking is to go out with not minimal, but a simple feature set. So we want to keep things simple and standard. So we are taking the Aave protocol, which has been battle tested. We are not saying it's unhackable, but it has been proven in the last few years that it's quite safe and the best in the industry. So we are going with Aave. We are not changing it much. We are not adding any additional bells and whistles. It's like the approach we are taking is like Apple and iPhone, right? So you go out with a limited feature set, do it well, and then you can add on top of that. So we are going out with something that just works very well and which is safe. Yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And it sounds like too, it's, and I like the answer you guys are giving where it's like, well, actually it is pretty risky. And these aren't necessarily misconceptions. They're valid concerns. And so I think that you guys, what I hear from you guys is really kind of taking, education and a connection to your community and customers as a mechanism for kind of like de-risking the platform. It's like there's a direct correlation between how informed your users are and how risky the platform is, because I think that a lot of risk comes from people just not knowing what they're doing. And I can guarantee you I'm somebody who's going to have no idea what they're doing. And so I think the testnet stuff is going to be great. And I think that now I want to take a bit of a dive into the platform itself. And there was one thing, I think a really interesting way to kind of, start unpacking this a little bit is like on the spaces that you guys did. I think you hit on something that is really an important aspect of Bonzo Finance, which is you guys are, building a protocol, right? You guys aren't necessarily like the end game for this isn't exactly like, oh, it's a website you go to and type in some stuff and borrow and lend. This is like, there's a layer deeper to this, which is like, we are developing a protocol and anyone can develop a front end for it. Anyone can utilize this protocol and whatever they want to do. And I wanted to see if we could kind of like, explore that a little more and kind of from a product standpoint, what does that mean for the ecosystem, right? Like, I mean, if you have a protocol, does that mean like any wallet or any DEX or any DApp on Hedera through utilizing your protocol can offer borrowing and lending inside of their DApp? I was just curious to kind of expand on that a little more.
Yeah, it's a great question and something that we've been thinking a lot about in terms of the protocol being an open source permissionless protocol that anyone can incorporate into their existing application or build a front end for. And we're really looking at it as we're building the Bonzo Finance ecosystem and creating an ecosystem around Bonzo Finance. And so, one example, like you said, you can take the functionality at the protocol level of lending and borrowing, and you can bring that into the experience of a new or existing application. So just like how HashPack, for example, incorporated token swaps. They took Saucer Swap and brought that into their experience. They too, not saying they will, obviously something that we'd be curious to explore, but bringing lending and borrowing functionality into Saucer Swap, or if someone wanted to create a different front end for Bonzo Finance and offer that to users and maybe take a small fee for providing that front end functionality, they absolutely can and should and are encouraged to do that. And then there's also, when you look at Aave as an ecosystem on other networks like Ethereum, we anticipate, other unique, innovative types of applications to be built on Bonzo Finance. Like one of the ones that was super interesting was a game called Aave Gachi, where they utilized collateral and debt tokens as part of a interactive game called Aave Gacha that they created, where there's some utility with those tokens in that gaming experience. And so we're excited to explore sort of what types of unique and interesting and new applications can be built based on the Aave protocol and within the Bonzo Finance ecosystem on Hedera. So things like hackathons, we anticipate, doing hackathons or doing developer workshops. And then, in addition to just the protocol itself and the functionality there sort of being utilized for these other applications that want to plug into it, there's also an ecosystem around liquidations. So as Gaurang had mentioned earlier, if collateral, let's say if a token that you borrow drops below a certain price and all of a sudden you don't have enough collateral to retain the borrow that you've created, a liquidation takes place. Essentially, the collateral that you have deposited has to be liquidated and then used to pay off people who are lenders in that assets pool. And there are bots called liquidation bots. We're in the process of building those and testing them out and ensuring the right functionality. We will likely be operating one of them as well. But the thing is anybody in the ecosystem can operate a liquidation bot. And when you sort of perform that, you're looking for those opportunities where liquidations are taking place. And as an operator of liquidation bots, you actually get the benefit of a fee for performing that action. So, we anticipate many users in the ecosystem being able to set up their own bots, helping ensure the sort of protection of the protocol by performing that liquidation bot function, and also earn rewards for participating in that way. So we see that as a big opportunity as well. And then a final thing too is there is this concept called flash loans.
Right.
And flash loans are the ability to, in a single transaction, be able to borrow assets from the protocol and pay those assets back. And in the midst of that, perform some type of financial transaction with the assets that you've borrowed. And you can do all this without actually providing collateral. So you could program a flash loan to, let's say there's a price discrepancy between an asset on HeliSwap and SaucerSwap. And again, disclaimer, not financial advice. This is just an example. But let's say you want to sort of take advantage of that price discrepancy between those two decentralized exchanges. You can borrow the asset that has the price discrepancy. And again, all within a single transaction, borrow, perform swaps, and help support a more efficient market on Hedera for that asset, while at the same time earning a profit on that price discrepancy. And you would want to do so ideally with a larger amount of an asset, because the profit that you would gain from that is greater when you can leverage larger amounts of it. So there's a number of different front-end applications that exist in other ecosystems where they integrate, the functionality of Aave to create graphical user interfaces to easily configure flash loans. Today, especially when we first launch, it's going to be people who are developers who are familiar with smart contracts who can build a flash loan, and we'll provide sort of modular tools to be able to allow someone who's a developer to go and do that. But in the future, wanting to integrate with those graphical user interfaces to make it even easier to access that flash loan functionality for the everyday user, whether that's an institution or also just retail individuals. But we see that as being very powerful. And then, with that too, there's a fee associated with it. And so when you talk about sustainable economic protocol, where Bonzo needs to generate sort of its own revenue. And so for that type of transaction, there's revenue that is generated for someone who's taking advantage of that.
Right on.
No, that's a great answer, Brady. Like, just to add on to like what I think is, like, we are just enablers. Like for us, it's our whole ethos is about being open source, being collaborative, being part of the ecosystem and growing the ecosystem together, as I said earlier, right? And with Bonzo, with the protocol, we are just beginning this, and we are starting this, right? And then we want to decentralize this like as soon as possible. So in the roadmap we have multiple steps, and having a DAO which kind of owns the protocol, takes care of the protocol, that's like one of the in the near future that's going to happen. We want to enable that. And then we want the ecosystem to grow around this. We want the community to actually make decisions how to grow this ecosystem. What we are here to do is to just ignite that flame, ignite that spark, and then we sit back and we see how it how it grows into a big tree.
Very cool. So a couple more questions, and I think that one thing that I found very interesting from your spaces that you touched on as well is you specifically mention the treasuries that certain projects have or investors have, and right now that value just kind of being locked up in an account somewhere. And in an ecosystem right now where I think a lot of projects, retail projects could be struggling for funds or what have you, like in Hedera and outside of Hedera, just because of the way that the market's been over the last year or so. On Hedera, we haven't had that extra headroom or that ability to access that kind of liquidity. And a good example would be, maybe there's some token lockups, or maybe, a project on Hedera has a ton of HBAR that they just can't really touch because they can't sell it and it can't really be put to work in certain ways. So you guys touched on that and made it clear that, the addition of borrowing and lending would allow a lot of these projects to start to access that value, start to really put those assets that they have to work without necessarily having to spend them. And so I kind of was curious, like maybe expanding on that a little more, and maybe what kind of impact you think that may have on the ecosystem at large in Hedera, maybe like a more of a stimulating effect. I don't know what you're envisioning, but yeah, maybe touching on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, you're right. With regards to token-based projects, there is inaccessible liquidity. Large maybe token holders or investors, team members, treasuries that have tokens that are being held that for whatever reason, maybe restrictions on sales or otherwise, they can't access that liquidity. And with Bonzo Finance, you're in a situation where you can provide that liquidity. You can earn interest and fees for providing that. And there's, unlike a DEX, maybe there's no sort of possibility of impermanent loss associated with the functionality that exists on Bonzo Finance. So like from that sort of narrow perspective, it's sort of less risky than maybe providing that to a DEX. And so what we anticipate is that this could allow for greater liquidity of some of these tokens and token-based projects that previously was not accessible to the ecosystem. And it makes it available for other people to borrow and then do things like and again, not financial advice in any way, but supply to saucer swap liquidity pools and earn sort of yield on that, while at the same time boosting the liquidity of that asset in the ecosystem and creating more efficient markets. We see that as being a huge benefit to the DeFi ecosystem. In doing so, you're also helping support the trading volume that exists on Hedera's DeFi ecosystem. And trading volume is a sort of Web3 wide metric that's being tracked across other DeFi ecosystems, as we saw from the Masari report recently for Hedera. And then a big one that we're focused on, we know that this very much so aligns with the sentiment of the community as well as the objectives of HBAR Foundation and other folks as well, but USDC liquidity, stablecoin liquidity. So, Hedera doesn't have the most sort of liquidity of USDC. And we think that this is a really great opportunity to boost the liquidity of USDC in the Hedera ecosystem. If you look at, and we were just looking at this today, other protocols in lending and borrowing across other Web3 networks, specifically stablecoins, if you look at the utilization rate of stablecoins in those lending protocols, or in other words, sort of the amount that is being borrowed against the total amount that exists in the protocol, utilization rates are incredibly high, 90%, 80 to 90%. And so we think that with Bonzo Finance in place for the Hedera DeFi ecosystem, there is an incredible opportunity to boost the native USDC liquidity in the ecosystem. And in doing so, you open up greater opportunities for USDC to potentially be listed on centralized exchanges, to essentially position to maybe Circle to incorporate Hedera USDC into their TTCP offering that allows you to convert USDC across different chains easily. So not saying that it's going to immediately change things, but a big reason for sort of that's preventing those things from taking place is sort of just the liquidity of USDC and also the utilization of it. And if we can boost that, then we're contributing back a lot to the DeFi ecosystem on Hedera and helping support on that front as well. And Gaurang may have more to add there too.
Yep. So Brady, I think you touched on two really amazing use cases, and just to add to that, one more really great use case is this. So now I'm literally I have Aave open on my laptop right now, and I'm looking at their different chains. So on the Ethereum chain, on the Arbitrum chain, and on some Polygon chain, for example. What's the most supplied asset on Aave?
What?
It's staked Ether. So on Hedera, we have a great opportunity with HBAR X. So what people are doing essentially is they stake their Ether on Lido or Rocket Pool or something, right? And then they take that staked Ether. They get in return they get this WS staked Ether token, and they deposit this on Aave. Right now, against this staked Ether token, they can again borrow their Ether. So what that means is that they get liquidity and they get access to their Ether again. And this is a really great use case if you think about it, right? So you're getting back your HBAR in a way, and you're getting yield on your HBAR X, and you're getting a few other things. So yeah, that's another great use case.
Love it. And I know we're getting up to the hour here, so I got a bunch of news to do, and I know you guys are very busy. So I wanted to just wind it up with a couple last questions. I guess for me. Correct me if I'm wrong, based on the spaces that you did, you've got a targeted kind of launch for mainnet for like July this year. And so maybe curious for you guys, like just illustrating what are some kind of milestones along the way to that? Like what are some things that the community and the ecosystem are going to be able to look forward to as you guys get closer to mainnet launch?
Yep. Again, don't hold us onto this. These dates are subject to change.
Not financial advice.
Yeah, no financial advice, no exact dates. But yeah, let's say a month or like 4 to 5 weeks, we want to launch the testnet public version, and I think we're pretty confident we could do that. The main thing we're working on is like the final design things on that. So we want to do the testnet launch. And then we have a few more things on the horizon. I don't know if we can talk about that very legally, but yeah, like testnet launch is like a main thing. Like, see, we will have points systems, and we'll have other things. We'll have the DAO on the roadmap again. But for us, like definitely the main thing is to get the community involved, get them to use the testnet. So like that's a major milestone for us. Like let's say 4 to 5 weeks from.
Gotcha. That's exciting. And maybe to throw it to you, Brady, as Gaurang said, like maybe there's some alpha. This is just a couple friends chatting. So feel free to divulge, otherwise no pressure. But yeah, from your side, yeah, what can we look forward to from Bonzo as you guys get ready for a mainnet launch?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think Goran covered sort of the focus. We want to stay hyper focused on ensuring the best experience for users and also educating them along the way and keeping everybody very up to date. So the testnet launch is going to be a really important part of that. We want to ensure that that experience is squared away and give people the opportunity to um, experience the protocol and what it will be like on mainnet, sort of performing these types of transactions in real life, sort of with real assets, and again, education. Really wanting to help support and educate everybody in the ecosystem is just such a critical part of what we're doing, and being there to help answer questions. Um, Let me think. Yeah,
Good stuff.
yeah. Otherwise,
Just one alpha, as we have some exciting things coming up in June and July.
Okay. Any hints? Any hints, guys?
Uh, let's see. We can't say anything about it right now. We are just going through the legal process. So the lawyers are like, stay mum on this.
Gotcha. I
Yeah.
totally respect that. I was gonna say too, before I let you guys go, Brady, you brought up karate combat as an example of a project with a token and those different types of things. Kind of unrelated, just as I transition to the rest of the show. But did you guys see the news that Karate Combat posted that May from HashPack is going to be fighting in the next Karate Combat at Consensus?
We did. I just shared that in our team Slack.
Yeah.
Actually, we're so excited about that. It's so cool. And yeah, I was saying, like, I know where my karate tokens are going to be placed for that fight, but it's great to see her participating in that. So excited.
Yeah, I gotta say, I wish Bonzo Finance was around right now so I could do some kind of crazy loan and throw it all on May for this fight. That's one thing that I was hoping, but we'll have to wait till next time. Hopefully May does around too. But with that, like, really appreciate you guys coming on, following along. Obviously, Brady, you've had a big journey in this space. There's a new chapter, and then Gaurang, it's awesome to have you in the community. It's great to meet you. So welcome on the show anytime. But yeah, great chatting with you guys. If there's anything else you guys want to mention before I boot you off to get on with the news here, feel free. Call to action for the community or anything like that.
No, yeah, really appreciate you having us. Yeah, this was great. I'm always happy to join, and we're excited to keep providing updates as things progress. We do have our Discord that's live, and we've been engaging the community pretty heavily in there. So you can access that at bonzo.finance/Discord is the invitation to join. And then follow us on the Bonzo Finance Twitter handle, so at Bonzo_finance, and we continue to do educational postings and development updates and things of that nature. So definitely one of the best ways to try and keep in touch on progress. But we really appreciate you having us, and then also just everybody in the community who's joined and is interested in learning about what we're building.
Right on.
And yeah, we have our weekly Twitter Spaces tomorrow, Thursday. So please join us there. I'll see you guys there tomorrow. Yeah.
Right on.
Bye.
Okay, thanks so much, guys. You take care. Okay.
Thanks so much.
So let's dive into it here. I got some stuff that I want to dive into. Bonzo Finance, like, super cool. I'm stoked about that. Again, I'm fresh to the kind of, borrowing and lending Web3 kind of stuff. So, very fortunate to be in a position to ask these stupid questions and get some answers. So really appreciate those guys. Yeah. And also curious to hear everyone's thoughts on kind of borrowing and lending in the ecosystem, kind of what could be happening with it. So stoked about that. Real quick, just before I continue on, huge shout out to supporters of the show. Supporting the show is really easy. You send HBAR to an address that I sell the HBAR and buy equipment for the show and subscriptions and all that kind of stuff. So it wouldn't be possible without contributors to the show. The address to send a contribution, the Hedera address is in the thread pinned to the top of the spaces. And if you're watching the video, it is on the screen. Call now, supply while supplies last. But yeah, seriously, couldn't do without you guys. And, I'm really happy to have a show that is not sponsored and there's no ads, and I can shit talk anybody that I like. And, have great guests on, and just, I have a lot of fun doing this show. So I really, really appreciate all the support. And let's dive into it. So, I mean, May from HashPack Fighting in Karate Combat. I mean, just quickly touching on that. I mean, I was not expecting that. I had no idea that was going down. But you can see here for people watching the video version real quick too. I'm getting very close to switching the live stream from audio, or I guess there is video in the spaces, but to be honest, really quick, like straight up, Twitter Spaces, or X Spaces, I see X really moving from like audio to video, and for a very long time, Twitter video streaming was just like horrific, like horrifically bad. And recently, I mean, shout out to Elon and the crew. I mean, Twitter video streaming, or X video streaming, or whatever it is very good. And so as the show's grown and has a video component, I think that this little video stuff inside of Twitter Spaces here kind of blows. I mean, it's a horrible angle. It's just weird. It doesn't work. And so I think that I'm going to start making some moves, doing some more live stuff. I've mentioned that, plans are in place to have the full video feed of my main camera and stuff, and my computer screen and everything on YouTube. Thinking about doing that for X. And then just trying to figure out what's going to be most convenient for guests joining. That's the big problem there, is Twitter Spaces is so easy for people to hop on. So I'm still figuring it out. The pathway is clear for YouTube live video, which is great, but I'm just kind of seeing what we want to do about X, because the one thing I want to avoid is the people that tune in for the show live. I want to make sure that it's not like just changing all of a sudden one week and you got to do a whole new thing. So, and also make it easy for guests. So that is on my mind. But for people watching, I guess, the recording of this, soon this will be live video. But yeah, this is the post from Only LARPing, who is one of the co-founders of Karate Combat, and we've got the the lineup for fighters, and we got May from HashPack. And people unfamiliar, of course, May is, she was just overseas, doing some fighting and stuff like that. So she's a legitimate fighter. And she's also a Canadian HBAR barbarian. So shout out to May as a community member. I think that's going to be awesome. Quick note too, for the developers out there, little bit of a surprise here. And again, we're going to, this episode, we're going to be jumping around a little bit. But the testnet reset has been skipped for this period. So for people unfamiliar, the testnet for Hedera, as Brady and Gaurang were talking about, is a great way to test your products, allow users to get familiar with them in a fashion that utilizes essentially fake HBAR, and it's just a great free way to test out if things work. And as people are testing the testnet versus the mainnet, the testnet can get clogged with just junk, right? Spam, people testing stuff. So the testnet can get clogged up, which makes things challenging. So they've been kind of reworking how the testnet functions. And I think a solution to that problem is just resetting the testnet. So it creates some issues for developers of need to rework their testnet dApps after the reset. But this period, there is none. They're skipping it. So it seems that other aspects of the testnet, I guess the faucet and different things like that, are starting to alleviate some of that pressure on the testnet. So there's something that tells me, maybe the whole testnet reset thing was more of a temporary thing. Maybe it'll go to a new cadence, but right now, we're just skipping this one. So take it easy, devs. Smooth sailing until the next one, and the next one should be July 25th. So, smooth sailing until then, I guess. Also, too, kind of like a little bit of a question mark. I had some people DMing me. I saw some things on Reddit. about, Coupon Bureau still to this day, after years of literally nothing. Well, I shouldn't say nothing. I mean, we've got Toshiba, the global leader in point of sale. That's not fair. We've got the global leader of point of sale systems, Toshiba, integrating the new coupon standard. Like, there's been a ton of stuff behind the scenes. More so what I'm saying is, that's the sentiment from the community is like, where are the coupons? Where is the bajillion things? So there has been a lot of development, but recently someone shared, a LinkedIn post from like 2 months ago, that Brandy, who is the CEO of the Coupon Bureau, and kind of really spearheading the initiatives for, the 8112 standard, that, is utilizing Hedera, the big one, so she's actually stepping down as CEO, which is pretty substantial. She's going to be replaced by Brett Watson, who was the chief operating officer, so stepping up to COO. So she seems like it's a pretty good, leadership switch up. So, I mean, just worth noting, I mean, if you're one of those folks that's hot on the trail of coupons and stoked about coupons on Hedera, there's an update. There's a new CEO at Coupon Bureau. And these types of things are healthy. I mean, with these types of initiatives, it's almost like a relay race. It's, especially in these C-level executive positions, when you're just really trying to move an initiative forward, sometimes it's really healthy to have a change of hands and get someone fresh in there. So, some very substantial, I think, positive changes for the coupon stuff. We'll see how it goes. But shout out to Brandy, a real one, and Brett. I hope it works out. I think they're both cool people. So we'll see what's going on. But also, something we talk about quite a bit on the show, someone I'm trying to get back on the show, is David. I've had him on the show in the past, and he's a phenomenal guest, so I'm hoping to have him back, but I literally think he's just been so busy. But FSCO, everyone's been stoked about FSCO. We've talked about them a lot on the show. They're the whole kind of glue for like the MasterCard connection and all these kinds of things, all these buzzwords. So people are excited about FSCO, especially now because they are the winners of the ESG Finance Award by the Toko Metropolitan Government. So that's big. So basically, they're one of 5 companies that are part of this like global elite award kind of thing. And this is important because, effectively, I think that what this means is this is support for the next, 3 years of FSCO's expansion. And also look at the names that are tagged in this tweet. We've got the Tokyo government. We've got MasterCard, of course. We've got, I think that's literally the CEO of MasterCard. And then Hashgraph Association, HBAR Foundation, Rob Allen, Hedera. So this is a big move. And I think that FSCO is one of those use cases that, David, the CEO, is very, very steeped in the Hedera community, knows what we want to hear, and is delivering in a lot of different ways. So that's a use case to watch. And there's a big trend about these ESG use cases on Hedera kind of going global, right? I mean, we saw recent news of Dovu opening up their that are going to be opening up their offices in the UAE to serve that region. So we're starting to see, a lot of these projects start to really grow their footprint globally, which is great to see. So shout out to FSCO. We'll save that. I want to follow up now. So last week I shared kind of like a, it was a insider tip with some cool news. Well, not news, but just like information about, what could be going on in Hedera in 2024. And there were a lot of comments about that, a lot of follow up. And, people were leaving all sorts of comments. There's a lot of conversations about it, both on, on YouTube, also on X as well. I mean, you can just see the comments here. I had full on conversations with people in the replies here. and a lot of ideas being thrown around of what it could be. I think what grabbed people's attention the most was, from my source. And again, it was an anonymous source. It was a very, very connected individual, in the ecosystem. And, I'm not going to speak too much about kind of what the original thing was. You can go and watch that clip. But basically, after that, it was kind of really looking at what other people were hearing, other breadcrumbs they were seeing, and what kind of confluence that could provide in regards to like timelines and different things like that. I think most specifically people were focusing on the April roadmap, and also the fact that they're, the kind of like institutional access point that's purportedly coming in April, and then the kind of monster use case in Q3. So that was really also too. There was some great conversation on Reddit as well. The Hedera subreddit. I know I goof on the Hedera subreddit a lot, but still, a lot of good conversation happens there. Had some people sharing some good information in the comments on Reddit, which was good to see. But really what it came down to was like, this is why I called this space as kind of like part 2, is because for me, there was kind of one kind of laneway here that kind of aligned with what the source shared with me. Not so much in a way of like what they were talking about, but more so like the theme of what we could start to see coming into this ecosystem. And specifically, I saw a post on, again, the Hedera subreddit, because I was tagged in it, and the person who made it, they did this deep dive the same day that I published the kind of like the show and kind of what that, anonymous source was telling me. And they put out this deep dive on the DTCC and Securrency. And I was tagged in that post, and people were saying like, oh, did you do this post because of Brandon's video? And they were like, no, not really. And so I thought that was very curious that there was this really comprehensive breakdown of all these different breadcrumbs that relate to institutional access points, these different types of things. And it was done by a person that like literally hadn't watched that episode at all. And so it felt really organic to me. And I was looking at it, and I think off the top, for me, it's like, specifically talking about timelines. I don't think that something like this would be something we could expect in April. I think that's nuts, but it isn't far off from, what I'm thinking in my thinker brain here. And I wanted to just unpack it a little bit and just kind of read what they shared and share some of my thoughts on it, because I do think it's very interesting. I do think that there's like a few more questions that get raised by it, but essentially, what is the DTCC? Because this is an important thing. We've talked about this again, like I said on the show previously. I think it was like episode 100 and something or whatever. But the U.S. Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, DTCC, is like the behind the scenes manager for most of the buying and selling of stocks, bonds, and other financial securities in the U.S., right? So think of it as like a massive hub that ensures all of the money and securities change hands smoothly and accurately. Like when someone buys a stock and another sells it, the DTCC makes sure the buyer gets the stock and the seller gets the money. It's kind of like it's the trusted middleman for all this kind of stuff. And let's kind of look at this this post here, because they kind of hit on an important point here, which is the DTCC processes over $2.5 quadrillion worth of securities every year, right? Like that's crazy. They've got annual revenues of over $2 billion. They've got assets of $81 billion. So this is like a huge entity in institutional finance. This is the pipeline for a lot of the stuff that we talk about in traditional finance and TradFi. And reading further, in October 2023, DTCC acquired Securrency, a digital and financial technology company focused on tokenized issuance and trading of securities, right? So tokenizing these securities as assets. And very similar to what, we've seen Aberdeen do. That's a governing council member. They're tokenizing money market funds and stuff like that. So these types of things are happening all over the place. It's a big theme in the Web3 space right now, the narrative around real world assets and tokenized securities and all this kind of stuff. So this is like right down the line. And through this acquisition, DTCC formalizes its current DLT pilot initiatives and is expected to deliver an institutional post-trade platform that supports most digital asset products, including existing securities wrapped in a digital structure and digitally native on-chain assets. DTCC is a truly unique market participant, both from a clearing licensing perspective and a, quote, everyone in the industry uses them perspective. That's the big thing here, is like, this is the pipeline literally everybody uses. Asset managers, broker-dealers, custodians, banks, service providers, the entire capital markets industry will eventually be users of these DLT products, right? So that's really the key thing here is, and this is before Hedera even comes into the fold, right? Which is, we've got the DTCC. They are the gateway for a lot of this activity, right? The quadrillion, $2.5 quadrillion dollars in volume. And so if you think about an access point in which institutions would start interfacing with tokenized securities, and you see the DTC acquiring a company like Securrency, you start to connect some dots here, right? So let's continue on. So the acquisition will help enable DTCC to continue driving blah, 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 blah. So what's Securrency? What is this company that the DTCC has acquired? Founded in 2015, the company was the longest standing security token infrastructure platform prior to its acquisition by DTCC in 2023. So it's been around for almost a decade, right, doing this stuff. Securrency issued tokens are compatible with virtually any blockchain network, right? And provide an advantage over competitors that only offer Ethereum compatibility. So there's another element here, right? Is a lot of these different service providers doing these tokenized securities, a lot of times it's only Ethereum, but Securrency is really interoperable. So the regtext compliance engine called CAT's blah, 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 blah. Native customer management applications are embedded into the Securrency platform, which allows issuers to manage their investors without the use of external applications. And it's evident that DTCC will leverage Securrency's pivotal efforts to further develop the base tokenization layer as real-world assets continue to digitize. It appears, and based on the research of the individual that posted this really great breakdown, u/Srijank, based on their research, it appears that Hedera is inherently baked into a lot of the technological aspects of Securrency. And so they kind of dive into a few of these. So the first one is virtual power. And Virtual Power Exchange is a joint venture between Boss Controls and Securrency, leverages Hedera for several of its core capabilities and differentiators. And it's, the VPE will leverage the Hedera token service and the consensus service as a trust layer for this kind of carbon credit, renewable energy credit service and marketplace. And we've talked about the Virtual Power Exchange on the show before, and that's a joint venture of Securrency. So right off the bat, you start to see, okay, Securrency is already kind of embedded in the Hedera ecosystem with some of these different joint ventures. Also, there's OpenCrowd. And OpenCrowd, as part of this, as part of what Securrency is working on, OpenCrowd is actually a little more of a familiar face in the ecosystem, right? OpenCrowd is, specializing in blockchain solutions. They work with Hedera, and they developed, the Dragon Glass Explorer, if people are familiar with that. They support drop payments, right? They support Diamond Standard already. Boom. 3 major names that we're all familiar with in the Hedera ecosystem, right? Drop, Dragon Glass, Diamond Standard, right? That's OpenCrowd. And they've partnered with Securrency, enhancing its platform and regulatory compliance for securities trading across DLTs. So again, right, another point of confluence that Hedera could really come into this conversation in a big way. The other thing is Vertalo and Securrency. So Vertalo partnered with Hedera Hashgraph to integrate their platform with Hedera's ledger, aiming to improve performance, security, and compliance. The company later partnered with Securrency to enhance their platform's token services and compliance features, and they are linked with the Hedera ecosystem players like DLA Piper, Entoro Capital, Arcax, focusing on digital assets solutions. So again, another connection here. And continuing on, this is kind of where it gets interesting. So as we kind of wrap all this up in this post here, when we look at all these different people involved and the ways in which all these partners of Securrency are integrated with Hedera and how integrated Securrency is with Hedera and how many times we've seen them come up, and now the DTCC literally acquiring that company, right? We've seen this in the past too, of acquisitions of these kind of Hedera-focused companies into larger companies. It kind of leads us to a few different things. And ending off this post, the author says, DTCC integrating with Hedera Hashgraph will be a game changer, as many of you have already stated previously, in terms of scale and governance, and both key for a body like DTCC. No other network comes close. And that's really kind of where it kind of leaves off is, these names kind of keep coming up and these connections kind of keep coming up, and the conversation in that post is really great. But I think that's why people kind of bring in, the show from last week and kind of what was shared with me by the anonymous source and kind of the information that I shared on the show is, very, very in line with that. Now, again, when the source shared that, an institutional access point or however it was worded, something to the effect of that for April, something of this scale, like I said, probably not, but it is kind of in that wheelhouse. This does make sense. And, always in my mind, I kind of go like, if the DTCC wasn't looking to leverage Hedera Hashgraph as a technology for their DLT efforts in their kind of, multi-quadrillion dollar throughput, platform that they have that everyone uses, would they be doing anything different, right? If they were interested in using in Hedera, would they be doing anything different? And I don't think so. And I think that that's kind of where I land at with this. And I think, some questions pop to mind, which is like, what is Hedera's exact role in this? We don't know. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of other networks that are trying to do these types of things. And obviously, Hedera is not going to be the only network that the DTCC looks at. But I think that the acquisition of Securrency really does make it appealing. And the addition of some of the stuff that was shared with me, it just, it leans it a certain way. Now, is this going to, like, what does, like, I don't want to get too hypothetical, but you start to think, what would happen if Hedera were to be utilized on that scale, right? Like, my mind hasn't really gone there for a long time, as I think because of the bear market of like, what if Hedera was used as a technology platform to deal with, this massive market at a huge scale? And it's like, from a technology standpoint, I mean, it's clear. I think a lot of people in the community agree, that Hedera is a great technology for this. I think there's some more building blocks that are needed, but, but the other side to me goes like, what is going to make Hedera appealing to something like, the DTCC? And I think that unfortunately, a big component of that is some of those, as Brady and Gaurang was saying, is like those KPIs that everyone looks to: total value locked, total volume, total users, total value represented, all those things. And right now, Hedera doesn't have like the most impressive numbers in those areas, and it's important to grow those things. And I think that these types of things really illustrate how you have to tackle both the kind of degen retail side of things and you also have to tackle kind of the institutional enterprise type things. They need both. You can't, I think the lesson we've learned in this community recently is, that neglecting retail or thinking that Hedera is above retail in some way does a lot of damage. And so I think that we are recovering from that a little bit, but I think that moving forward, it's important to, the way I think of it is retail, degens, they're going to get us to the top 5, and enterprise institutions is what's going to keep Hedera in the top 5. That's my take. And I'm interested to see kind of what unfolds. I mean, this is kind of part 2 to this discussion. Those are kind of the follow-ups that I've seen in relation to that. And I'm excited to see what transpires, what things could be happening. And I did a post yesterday. I was kind of like, it's April now. And that was a big, aspect of the information that was shared with me. And now we're in April. So I think it's going to be a very interesting time this month, as the source shared with me is, this is going to be a key month. And if it's not, then, we're going to have to obviously do an episode about that, but we'll have to see. So I'm definitely going to be watching things closely. I want to talk about Diamond Standard now. There was a little bit of a, not really news here. There was some news, and I think that things have kind of been settled. I just want to take a minute to kind of just explore what happened, because I think that it's something we're going to see a lot in crypto and in Hedera specifically. And I think something we need to just be more accepting of. But I do think on the other side, better communication is needed 100%. So the original story here is on, what day was it? I literally think that this was like on the day of my last episode, which was frustrating because that happens sometimes. There'll be like some kind of spicy news that I miss out on as I'm doing the show. But CoinDesk published an article that said, diamonds are the latest conventional asset to get crypto's real world asset tokenization treatment, arriving on the AVAX network via Diamond Standard, Avalanche. So immediately, every comment that I see on this is like, is Diamond Standard leaving Hedera? What is going on? What does this mean? And I think that's rightfully, it's good to be concerned about that, because we've seen it play out a few ways, right? And like I was saying to Brady and Gaurang as well on the show, is like, there's a few different camps. And I find that, in that first camp of people that kind of step into Hedera looking for opportunity, not really understanding the network or kind of some of the advantages and disadvantages, and maybe some of those disadvantages, in fact, being opportunities. I think that sometimes we see potentially larger use cases just, check out and disappear, juicy verse. And I think that, for me, there's a gut reaction, right? When you see, something like Diamond Standard have an article about them operating on another network, there's that muscle memory of, the HBAR Twitch muscle that's like, what are you doing? You're Hedera. What are you doing? And it's very quick to do that. And I think that it happens because, it's very tough to lose a use case or lose a project. And Hedera has legitimately lost projects to other ecosystems for whatever reason. And it definitely takes a toll on the community that are super stoked about those projects. And it happens. And I think that, part of the problem is just a lack of information, because sometimes those projects don't actually leave the ecosystem, right? They're just launching another product in another ecosystem and another network. And I think that going back to what Lehman Baird said recently about tribalism really having the potential to kill this network, it's true. And I think that we have to remember that in the enterprise world, in the big business world, in the institutional world, they're going to be trying every single network out there, right? If a big corporation goes, we need to find some new internal chat software, like they're going to buy a subscription for every single chat software available everywhere and just test all of it. Similar to, we need to find a better way to, I've heard about this tokenized thing. Like maybe there's a way to tokenize this kind of stuff. They're going to try it on every network. They're going to try everything. And sometimes I think that it can definitely burn, communities that are just, just happy to be here. And so in the case of Diamond Standard, it turned out to be the latter. It turned out to be, no, we're still on Hedera. No plans have changed. We're just doing more stuff on other networks, which I think is good. Like it just means a larger footprint for some of these use cases. And I think that really is, when we look at very complex projects, complex companies, a single solution is going to incorporate like all sorts of different software and vendors. So like, it's not going to be strange to see these Web3 enterprise use cases leveraging like maybe 3 different L1s or something. Like that stuff is just going to happen, and we have to get used to it. And I think this is one of those stories. And after, questioning and different things from the community, Shane from the HBAR Foundation just explicitly stated, all 3 products are still built on Hedera, right? Diamond, the Diamond Standard coin, the Carrot, right? The Diamond-backed stable coin, and the Bitcarbon, the royalty token. Diamond Standard created, all those stuff on Hedera. That stuff lives on Hedera. And so I guess really the only thing is this fund, the Diamond Standard fund, is running on Avalanche. So that's kind of the main thing here is like these enterprises are just going to operate on all different networks. They're going to be doing all sorts of different things. And so I think that was an interesting thing to kind of watch. And I think a positive one. I think that initially my response was like, God damn it, we lost another one. But you take 5 minutes and you can look into it and you go, oh, they're just expanding. They're working on different networks. I don't think it's kind of a bad thing. Also too, like they posted a tweet that's like, we heart Hedera, which this is what really the point of it for me. It's like, this is all people want, like it's actually this stupid, right? It's like, some of these enterprises have to clue into the fact that like things are a little bit simpler. It's not the end of the world if, you do something and people are upset and angry. It's like, sometimes it's just like, we love Hedera, and people go, oh, well, great. They're building on Hedera. They love Hedera. Like sometimes that's enough. That's communication, right? That's community. That's spending 5 minutes sending out a tweet. I think that those types of things from an enterprise standpoint go a long way. And so in my mind, paying a little closer attention as soon as Diamond Standard goes, hey, people, are upset for the wrong way. Literally just they could have just sent a tweet way earlier, right? We love Hedera, and it's like fixes everything. It takes pressure off. And so I think that sometimes, it's like getting too technical, getting too detailed, all that kind of stuff, I think just gets lost on people. There's another story. This kind of relates really. I just want to touch on it really quick because I don't want to blow it out of proportion. But this maybe relates to a few different things I've been talking about. I don't know, but this is something this is a development I'm very, very, very interested in. And that I think a lot of people should be very interested in. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's an interesting thing. I think we have to see what happens before, it goes down. But Scott Thiel, I think, is one of the most important players in the ecosystem. Scott Thiel obviously was at DLA Piper and, governing council, board member, day one, right? Like Scott Thiel is really like through and through an original Hedera executive, a Hedera governing council member, Hedera board member, and has been involved in so many different key decisions. And, I think that a lot of people in the community are very favorable to Scott Thiel and kind of what he works on. I was disappointed. I was at the Hedera booth in Denver this year for ETH Denver, and Scott Thiel was hanging around the booth, and I didn't get a chance to chat with him. Of course, like he was talking to a bunch of people, so I didn't get a chance to chat with him, which I regret. But Scott Thiel has left Toko. He's resigned from Toko. And for people unfamiliar, Toko was a spinoff from DLA Piper that is focused on, again, tokenized securities. They're a very robust platform. And so for a lot of people, this was kind of a shock, and this was literally just, very recently and it went through my radar. And I think it went through a lot of people's radar. But Scott Thiel, no longer at Toko, no longer, no longer anywhere except the board on Hedera. So that's interesting to me. And I think that a few people go, well, if he's no longer at DLA Piper and no longer at Toko, like how is he on the board? And we have to remember that the Hedera board does have independent members that aren't on the governing council. So that's one thing. And so, of course, the initial, reaction to this is like, well, are we losing Scott now? Like, what's going on? And I find the last section of this LinkedIn post from Scott to be enlightening. There's this here. He says he's at Meterium. I don't know what that is exactly. But I'm going to try to take some time to dive into this. And it's powered by Toko, DLA Piper, and Hedera. Okay, already a bit of a sign of relief, right? Scott's new thing is powered by Hedera, so that's a bit of a breath here. And okay, I see the word NFT. Okay, I'm liking this. I see a metaverse thing, artwork. Okay, I don't know. It's a very well-made website, very polished. Let's look at the About Us page. So this is just one page. Okay, contact. Scott, where are you? So that's very interesting. So Scott Thiel is on my radar. He's got a new startup, clearly leveraging Hedera, and we'll have to kind of see. And so this Meterium project, we create cutting-edge tokenized marketplaces and immersive digital experiences, allowing you to generate new and ongoing revenue streams and expand your community. So stuff we've seen before that has failed. But again, I'm a Scott Thiel fan. I'm excited to see what goes on. And he says specifically watch this space to see what happens. So this is very interesting. Again, this isn't something that's like in the wheelhouse of the news tips that were shared with me, but this is another thing where I go, okay, did not have this in my cards, and this is very interesting. So I encourage people to, keep an eye on Scott Thiel and see what those developments are about. The other thing I want to talk about, we're almost through it here, guys. Really big show today. Appreciate everyone hanging around. This is a great crowd. Shout out to Tata listening. I also see No Man's Internet.HBAR listening. Shout out to you, literally sharing the show every week. Appreciate you. Tudor, good to see you. Paul, let's go. Good to see everybody. Yeah, lots of folks here. I love it. I want to talk about VR Jam. I know I don't want to dive into the whole thing. I don't really want to talk about the mechanics of everything just because I think that, people are, very charged up about all sorts of different things. But basically, they did a token launch and they had a, market maker, and, maybe there was some price manipulation, maybe there wasn't. But I think that all that aside, I think that, the kind of like response and communication from VR Jam has been difficult. I think that I don't know what their strategy is, but I think at a moment when you have a lot of people that are upset or frustrated, it's I saw that they disabled comments and then they're shutting down their Discord and stuff. So that was kind of weird to me. And then they reached out to me yesterday asking to be on the show. They said, what do they want to share? They said, let me see here. They want to, we'd like to see if we can arrange a time for our CEO to speak on one of your AMAs. I don't do AMAs. We just launched our native token on Hedera, and we're an HBAR Foundation grantee. So I guess they want to come on to talk about their token, but it's come on, guys. It's read the room. I mean, I'd love to have them on the show, but it's not going to be a share about your token and all that kind of stuff. It's it's going to be trying to get to the bottom of stuff. So I don't know. Respect to these guys. It's I don't want to do that kind of stuff, but I find that this is an example of how kind of, you know, communications marketing is like really, 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 really important. And, you know, I think that it's one of those things where it's like, you know, just maybe a little out of touch, maybe not exactly respecting the intelligence of the market and the community, and just kind of doing some things that I think turn people off of it. And it's like, you know, I think that, you know, this could be a really promising use case. They have, you know, some interesting things that people also shared some stuff from their, you know, past on other networks, maybe some mistakes or failures or whatever. I don't want to get into all that. It's been talked over in the community many times, but I just think it's an example of like really communications and marketing is important. And it's like, you know, to me, getting messages like that, you know, it comes across as like not really knowing what's going on and wanting to kind of just shove a message out there. It's like, I would say that, you know, VR Jam, before coming on the show, like, you know, switch your Twitter comments on or get Discord going or something. Cause like, you know, it's really important. Like community and communication is like really important. And this is a smaller ecosystem. If you're trying to like build your business in this ecosystem, it's really important to have, you know, people on your side. And right now I don't know if people are on VR Jam's side. And, you know, I think that it's, you know, it's a shame. I think that, you know, it's good to see new projects come into the ecosystem, but it's like, gotta try a new strategy, gotta try something new. I don't think that it is working, guys. But benefit of the doubt, let's see what happens. I'll be watching it. I've got no hate at all. And I think that it's just, for me, it just comes down to a lot of times is marketing and communication. It's like, sometimes you can really, it takes so much, this is what it comes down to really. It takes so much energy and resources to build trust, and you can lose it like that. And I think that sometimes it happens like genuinely, maybe by accident or lack of experience or whatever. And I just think that's why it's like these guys have a lot of experience. This is like communications and marketing. It sounds like that is their business. So it's like, for me, it was just kind of weird, the poor execution on that. So shout out VR Jam. Probably won't have you on the show, but I mean, you know, hoping things turn around, and it's good to have new use cases. So we'll see what happens. We got an update from the Hashgraph online group. Just wanted to share it quickly. Patches shared a tweet, and it's about HCS3. So it's this new standard. I don't want to talk everyone's ears off just because we're getting to the end of the show here, but like, you know, Hashinals and HCS1 and HCS20 and blah, blah. And it's like, there's all these new things happening. There's things being minted on or inscribed on Hedera consensus service, and files are being compressed to base 64 format and serialized. And it's like, it's very technical. It goes over a lot of people's heads. We've talked about it on the show. Go back and listen to those episodes. We go in deep, but the new development here, just for people in the loop that are following along with the story, HCS3 is a new standard. And the purpose of it is to bring, on-chain data to be more versatile. So this is cross-chain recursion. So essentially what it means is assets and different files that are inscribed on Bitcoin, being able to reference those in a Hedera hashinal. So if there's different files and things that are inscriptions on Bitcoin, if you inscribe something on hashinals, being able to reference those things. So that is very interesting. And then also the reverse, right? So being able for someone on Bitcoin to reference stuff on. So it is a new interoperability bridge, and it kind of continues the story of, you know, Bitcoin ordinals really being a potential huge market and a potentially huge way for people to onboard to Hedera. This is you know, another important key piece to that interoperable cross-chain recursion. So if that makes any sense to you, check it out because it's big. And then my last thing for the day that I wanted to share, the poll just ended. Oh, exactly 600 votes. Wow. We had exactly 600 votes. I did a poll And the poll was just something I was curious about, something I was kind of feeling, and it was on my mind. You'll know, you know, people who listen to the show regularly know that I kind of do these things of like, you know, if I look at myself today and then a year ago, how would my opinion change, or what has changed? I'm always trying to figure out like, you know, relational ways in which people are feeling in different ways of time. And basically my question was, have you become more bullish or less bullish on Hedera over the last year? I think that was an important question, just because I feel like it's one that we've all been asking each other indirectly for quite a while as the year kicked off and this first quarter was coming to a close. As like I feel like we were kind of asking each other those questions. I've had a lot of conversations too along those lines, trying to work through it. And so I just kind of threw out the poll and asked it. And I'm a little I'm surprised by the results. And I guess I'm surprised at how on the nose they are with what I thought. That's what kind of surprised me the most. I was expecting more so the poll to just kind of, you know, be something I wasn't really expecting, but this really feels like what I've been feeling in the ecosystem. I don't know if everyone else kind of sensed this as well, but obviously, of course, we got 53.8% of people that are more bullish on HBAR now versus 1 year ago. And I think that kind of represents things. And I think there can be arguments made that is too many people, right? That it's, you know, it can be said that, you know, there can't be 50% of people bullish on HBAR right now. But also you can make the argument the other way. Like there's got to be more than 50% of people bullish on HBAR. And then people who feel the same was 23%, and people who feel less bullish was 22%. Well, actually, they were pretty much tied, 23.3% and 22.8%. So either the same or less bullish. And the key thing here is almost 23% of people feel less bullish about Hedera and HBAR now than they did a year ago. And that tracks for me. Like that's the number that really kind of like hits and feels very accurate for me. If, you know, if I were to have to just pull a number out of my head of like, how many people, Brandon, do you feel in the community are less bullish on HBAR now than were a year ago? I'd probably say like, I don't know, 20, 30% maybe. It feels about right. And so this kind of hits at it for me. So I think that's the takeaway from this poll. You know, again, almost 600 votes is kind of like, you know, you can say 23% of people in the community, 20 to 30% maybe, are less bullish right now on Hedera than they were a year ago. And you know, that's a fourth. It's not like the end of the world, but it's important to pay attention to. I think that number is probably a lot higher than some people would expect. And so, yeah, I think it's an important thing. And also too, keeping in mind as well, this is a poll that largely represents the people who follow me. I think that I have in the Hedera community, I think that I have a relatively diverse following. So I think that it's a pretty good, 600 votes. I think that's a pretty good representation of the community, but just keeping that in mind, it's not like literally representing the community. It would be biased towards people who follow me. So just keeping that in mind, but put it out there. I wasn't expecting to get so many votes, 600 votes. Interesting data point, if useful for anybody, and was interesting to me. Another quick shout out. Thank you so much to supporters of the show. Again, couldn't do it without you guys. I love being able to dedicate the time to this. And I love being able to I've got a little bit of new equipment coming, which is nice. I'm going to do a little bit more of a setup. I'm thinking of, one thing that I was thinking of is like my background, because now I do the video stuff. It's like people enjoy seeing my dog sleeping and all that kind of stuff. And I was trying to figure out like, what's the vibe of the show? I'm thinking of getting like a green screen or a blue screen. And this just goes into kind of like rethinking the format of the show. Is like, I would love to incorporate more, community contribution to the show in the form of like artwork or music or different things, like what's behind me when I'm doing the show. Like, does someone want to design like a little room I'm in, or am I in outer space or whatever? Or maybe even I do the cover artwork for the show every week. It's like, do we incorporate NFT creators in that and different things like that? So I was just thinking about the show, like, oh, maybe there's other ways the show can support the ecosystem from something I'm really passionate about, which is like art, music, those different types of things. So that was something I thought about. I might, when we get a little more HBAR in the show's wallet there, I think I might get, blue screen or something. And then it'd be kind of fun. Like just, people do some artwork, put me in weird situations and just kind of have it. And that's kind of the vibe for the show. I think that'd be funny. Maybe it's a video or something. Who knows? Spitballing ideas. Yeah. So big show. I mean, we talked about a lot. I think the key things here were continuing conversations. This was kind of like a part 2. People were very excited and interested in kind of the, anonymous tip insider info thing from last week. So I think that, reflecting on some of the continued conversations in the ecosystem about what that was and other people's thoughts. I think obviously now we're in April, we're going to be following along with that, and then a bunch of other stories. And then of course, Gaurang and Brady joining from Bonzo Finance. Like I was, I DM'd them and I was like, oh, do we want to do like a quick chat, swing by the show? I don't do any I don't do any prep for questions or anything like that. Like the Hashgraph enthusiast show is like really, it's live, it's off the cuff, it's pretty relaxed, and there's no kind of prep or anything. People just kind of show up and they're kind of coming in cold, and I think it kind of fosters some organic conversation. So appreciated those guys coming on. I learned quite a bit. I was expecting to talk with them for like 20 or 30 minutes, but ended up talking for like literally an hour, I think, with those guys. I think people enjoyed it. So last thing too, like doing clips. People have been asking for clips for the show. So as I said, doing those, 5-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute clips of highlights from the show and sharing those. I think that people are really enjoying that, which is great. And also I'm debating whether I just post the full video version of the episode on X. Like, why not, post an hour and a half or 2-hour video. Maybe I'll do a poll for that, see what people think, because I know it's on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see what's going on. But excited for the future of the show. I'm excited for this year. On the poll, what would I vote on this poll? You can't really, I don't know if you can vote on your own poll. But for me, I would probably vote, to be honest, I might vote more bullish. Like maybe it's because of some of the stuff I know, I don't know, but to be honest, like I am genuinely feeling more bullish because of one of the things that Brady and Gaurang brought up from Bonzo Finance, which was, I think Gaurang brought it up, which was timing, right? Sometimes it's not so much about like total addressable market or KPIs, how much value do we have, or how many users do we have, or blah, 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 or all these different types of things. Sometimes it literally just comes down to being in the right place at the right time. And when I look at Hedera and I look at this ecosystem and I look at this network, I truly feel like we're at the right place at the right time right now. And the only way we could mess this up is not sticking together, right? Like not getting closer together. I think that's what's going to unlock the rest of this for us, is getting closer together, right? The foundation, Swirlds, Hedera, the association, the community, builders, developers, degens, all this kind of stuff. Can we get closer and closer and closer together? That's the pathway to decentralization. That makes me bullish AF. But with that, again, huge thank you to the Bonzo Finance guys for stopping by the show. That was a great convo. Huge shout out to people supporting the show, sharing the show. Yeah, I think that, next week, I think this month is just going to be interesting. April's going to be an interesting month. Apparently it's supposed to be. We'll have to see. I'm hoping that there's lots to talk about and some good guests. If you have an idea, like, anyone, feel free to let me know. If there's someone you'd like to have on the show, let me know. I'd have them on. But with that, have a great day, everybody. This has been a pleasure. Hello, future. Goodbye, past.
Thanks for listening to the Hashgraph Enthusiast Show, hosted by Brandon Davenport.
Listen to past episodes and support the show at itsbrandond.com/HBAR.
wish I wasn't on. I wish I didn't have my phone plugged in with a wire, because I wish I could bring it over to the dog so you guys can see. Can I zoom in? I can't even zoom in. Oh well. Anyways, cheers.